Have you ever wondered what humanity leaves behind? Clues, wonders, and unanswered mysteries? Tonight on Unearthed Secrets, we uncover royal games, sacred weapons, ancient bronzes, and a skull that challenged science. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The past awaits. The game. The kings once whispered over. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, where desert wind scatters the dust of kingdoms older than empires, archaeologists in the 1920s uncovered something that looked deceptively familiar: a gaming board. But, unlike checkerboards or carved stones known elsewhere, this one was made of inlaid shell, lapis lazuli, and red limestone, sealed in bitumen. It was beautiful, deliberate, and undeniably elite. This object, found in the royal cemetery at Ur in southern Iraq, was not pastime alone, but prestige embodied. Today, the royal game of Ur, also called the Game of 20 Squares, sits preserved in the British Museum in London, a board that once entertained rulers and priests over 4,000 years ago. The board's layout is striking: a sequence of squares arranged in a distinctive pattern, two blocks connected by a narrow bridge. Of its 20 squares, many are decorated with rosettes, a recurring Mesopotamian motif often tied to divine protection or royal authority. The inlay work shows lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan, shell from the Gulf, and red limestone likely mined locally. Even in its quiet museum case, the object radiates implication: trade networks, artisanship, wealth, and a cultural practice that extended beyond city walls. Ur, the city where it was found, was a thriving metropolis around 2600 BCE. Temples, palaces, administrative centers, ziggurats, workshops, and tombs filled with grave goods. Leonard Woolley, leading excavations there, uncovered royal graves filled with jewelry, lyres, weapons, and objects for daily or ritual use. Among these was the board that would rewrite our understanding of ancient gaming. Woolley labeled it a game, but no one at the time knew the rules. It was stylish, but enigmatic. For decades, the board rested as artifact without instructions, a relic of entertainment long since silenced. Then, in the 1980s, Assyriologist Irving Finkel examined cuneiform clay tablets from later periods describing races on a board of squares. The connection emerged. The royal game of Ur was more than ornament. It was structured play. Rules involved movement determined by knucklebone dice or tetrahedral dice-like objects. Pieces raced along path sequences, competing over controlled spaces. The game combined luck and strategy. The tablets referenced divine influence, rosette squares as benevolent or protective spots. Suddenly, the artifact became voice, not mute. Movement on the board resembled early race games, precursors to later systems like backgammon. The game may have carried ritual weight, symbolic meaning tied to fate or afterlife navigation. Some associated it with omens. Positions of pieces could signal messages from gods. Its presence in graves implies afterlife function, entertainment for journey, a reminder of prestige or metaphoric guidance. Grave offerings reflect what mattered in life, and gaming tables mattered. Material composition itself reveals deep context. Lapis lazuli was extraordinarily valuable, requiring long-distance transport through hostile terrain. Shell needed coastal access. Red limestone demanded quarrying skill. That the board uses bitumen indicates understanding of adhesive technologies. Construction was meticulous, likely performed in specialist workshops attached to palaces or temples. This was not folk entertainment. It was elite identity object. Replica boards and reconstructions allow modern observers to interact. People today can play rules approximated from tablets, experiencing mechanic echo of ancient competition. But the original board invites broader questions. Who played it? Kings? Priests? Merchants? Did children learn strategy from elders? Did diplomacy unfold over the board? Did religious divination depend on outcomes? The artifact offers possibilities, not answers, but each possibility enriches understanding. Mesopotamia pioneered many firsts: writing, taxation, urban planning. One could add structured leisure. The royal game of Ur shows organized play predating Egypt's Senate, though likely developed in parallel. Play is human universal, and ancient societies that develop complexity also develop places for rest and mental challenge. The board shows that 4 millennia ago, people competed strategically, valued aesthetic objects, celebrated craftsmanship, and linked games to larger belief systems. Its discovery in royal tombs tells why museums treat it as cultural touchstone. It illuminates daily life and ceremonial thought simultaneously. Unlike monumental inscriptions proclaiming conquest, this board suggests quieter truths: time spent in company, distraction from duty, negotiation of fortune. The British Museum display case shows the board beside tokens that served as counters. Their shapes vary. Game reconstructions typically use 7 per player. Some rosettes likely offered extra movement or protection, something scholars infer from pattern repetition in other game systems. The cuneiform tablet describing rules, written a millennium later, suggests race-based completion with symbolic meaning for each landing. Fate and progress, core ideas in ancient religion, manifest through play. The board's rosette squares deserve attention. Rosettes in Mesopotamia appear on architecture, cylinder seals, jewelry. They signify divinity, abundance, and protection. That they feature on special squares hints that the game's board was cosmological map, where blessed stops mattered, where players sought favorable spaces. Games were metaphors. This one may have represented journey through life, adversarial struggle, or spiritual passage. Popular presentations note that backgammon is descendant, but deeper comparison concerns human mentality, designing systems of hazard and control. Ancient players face same thrill modern players experience: anticipation, disappointment, calculation. That amazement, preserved in artifact, turns board into time bridge. Life around Ur involved hierarchy, ritual offerings, warfare, commerce. Yet leisure existed. The board carved the space for it. In royal chambers, one imagines nobles contemplating moves, servants watching, outcomes provoking cheers or sighs. The board's craftsmanship reaffirmed authority, though game's outcome temporarily leveled players. Luck could humble high rank, skill elevate lesser. The finds context matters. Woolly uncovered boards not singly, but among sets of grave objects. That multiplicity suggests cultural familiar practice. Ur was not exception, but exemplar. Other boards later found elsewhere, including Iran, Syria, and Egypt, indicate diffusion or parallel evolution. Game culture was regional, not isolated. The British Museum exhibits the most iconic specimen. Visitors kneel before display, tracing squares through glass, imagining hands moving counters across them. They see lapis sparkle blue under lights. Museum labels condense meaning. Object itself conveys fuller dimension, embodiment of wealth and intangible thought world. Archaeologists view board as microcosm. It tells trade networks, production methods, symbolic language. Assyriologists see cognitive system and textual coherence, linking artifact to script. Cultural historians see identity performance, elites proving status through rare objects. Anthropologists note universality. Humans play everywhere. Deterioration on edges reminds that time erodes cultural surface. Bitumen cracks, inlay wears, yet board remains legible. That legibility testifies to preservation quality in grave environment, sealed below earth, shielded from centuries of upheaval. In modern scholarship, the royal game of Ur remains case study in how artifacts gain meaning over time. Initially mere curiosity, later understood as key to ancient cognition. Finkel's research transformed interpretation, linking tablets to board. His public demonstrations revived game, letting modern players utter same exclamations ancient players voiced: victory, frustration. Museums increasingly mount interactive displays, videos of gameplay, digital boards. Visitors learn rules. Opposing pieces move opposite directions. Rosettes grant safety. Landing on opponent's piece displaces it. Chance determined by tetrahedral dice or knuckle bones. Modern gameplay mirrors antiquity, thrilling uncertainty. But artifact itself does more than show game. It implies social exchange. Play fosters conversation, negotiation. In courtly context, game might have accompanied decision-making or formed ritual for sealing agreements. When archaeologists found it, they could not conceive its full significance. That revelation unfolded through 20th century work. Today, board is icon and study of ancient gaming. The near-universal pattern of rosettes stands reminder. Visuals matter. Board is not blank, its decoration speaks. To walk past, case in British Museum is to enter relationship with players across time. Board stands mute, but viewers project onto it. Kings leaning forward, players calculating, watchers waiting for outcome. Museum quiet contrasts imagined tension around original sessions. Yet in studying board, we risk oversimplifying. It was more than entertainment. It was network artifact, status marker, teaching tool, spiritual device, played in households and temples alike. Its endurance signals significance beyond leisure. To understand why the royal game of Ur held enduring weight in Mesopotamian life, one must broaden lens beyond boards and squares. Games reflect worldview. In a culture where fate was believed to be written by gods, the movement of pieces influenced by chance symbolized interaction with cosmic will. Records show that diviners interpreted game outcomes as omens. A favorable throw signaled support, a setback hinted at warning. The board, then, was both tabletop object and symbolic theater, a ritual space where destiny momentarily took visible form. Consider its architecture: 20 squares, divided segmented progression, and protected rosettes. The number 20 carried structural meaning within Mesopotamian mathematics and timekeeping. Rosette squares formed sanctuary points. Movement patterns echoed celestial paths. Ancient societies frequently embedded cosmology within play. Egypt's Senate is read similarly. Thus, the royal game of Ur was not trivial. It was reenactment of spiritual narrative cloaked in amusement. Archaeological context strengthens interpretation. Boards were placed inside royal burials among weapons, jewelry, lyres, and ritual tools. Goods and tombs symbolize continuity, not pleasure alone, but guiding principles for afterlife. That suggests game's association with passage, success, or moral progression. Through its squares, one could imagine journey after death, each space a trial or reward, each rosette a celestial intercession. Scholars also note parallels between rosettes and Mesopotamian star iconography, protective astral symbols tied to gods such as Inanna. Rosettes mark privileged stops. In life, positions of safety. In cosmology, favors of deities. In ritual, interpretive nodes. That such symbols anchor board play suggests players recognized implicit narrative. The discovery of similar gaming boards throughout Near East regions, Mari, Shari Sokhta, even later in Egypt's New Kingdom, testifies to cultural transmission. Boards differ in form but share conceptual DNA. This diffusion reveals mobility of ideas across Bronze Age networks. Merchant caravans, itinerant craftsmen, diplomats, and priests traveled far. Games traveled with them. The British Museum's board is most recognizable due to preservation quality and excavation prestige. Yet, its identity is part of larger sphere of ancient race games. One finds something akin to standardized leisure across city-states, structured competition with pieces, track, dice. This suggests societies exchanged more than commerce. They exchanged habits of mind. Back in Ur, Woolley's excavation uncovered rich burial deposits associated with elite women. Priestess of Ur, Queen Puabi's tomb, containing lyres, carriages, jewelry, and boards. These tombs exhibit social staging. Death performed grandeur of life. Among them, the game board was not tucked away as afterthought. It was curated for inclusion. That heightened sense that play had significance for elite identity. Let us examine mechanics more tangibly. Irving Finkel's translation of tablets discovered at sites like Babylon and Nineveh reveals rules. Each player moves 7 pieces along mirrored paths, determined by throws of binary dice, knucklebones used as yes/no counters. Landing on rosette yields extra turn or safe harbor. Landing on opponent expels their piece. Final goal? Move pieces off board, completing path. Strategy lies in blocking opponent and exploiting rosette squares. This format, racing along exposed path, parallels Egyptian Senate but with clearer rule evidence. That clarity positions Ur's game as earliest known fully documented rule system. However, its purpose extended beyond entertainment. Some tablets pair game with omen lists. Positions of counters could represent predictions, good fortune, bad omen, legal matters, romantic prospects. Thus, board becomes portable divination tool. Blade between rational play and ritual practice blurs. Examine its craft again. The lapis lazuli inlay was no trivial purchase. Its source, Afghanistan's Badakhshan mines, shows Ur's reach and value assignment. Lapis was sacred, symbolizing sky and royalty. Using it on board squares imbues object with cosmic materiality. Shell inlays came likely from Gulf, assembled carefully. Red limestone adds contrast. Board's underside, reinforced with bitumen, speaks to Mesopotamian mastery of asphaltic materials. Used in construction, waterproofing, sealing. That depth of technique indicates specialized workshop. Museums often understate artisan skill. Each square cut, placed, sealed, required competence. Imagine workshop, master craftsperson instructing apprentices, sourcing tiny shell pieces, precision fitting lapis, heating bitumen to correct viscosity. That labor cost signaled value. Game was artifact of elite leisure. Today, board appears static, but originally it was dynamic, scuffed, polished by hands. Counters clacked against surfaces. Dice rolled. Voices filled rooms. Archaeology resurrects object, but not sound. Yet, museum reconstructions allow tactile engagement. Visitors play alongside staff, glimpsing tension of race. That engagement bridges ancient and modern experiences. Its survival through uncertainty is remarkable. Ur suffered decline, floods, abandonment. Empire shifts buried objects beneath the soil for millennia. Board endured, protected by a burial environment. Excavation retrieved it intact enough to reveal form. Conservation stabilized, repaired fragments, mounted it securely. That care ensures its legacy for research and public education. Why does this artifact matter beyond novelty? Because it encapsulates interplay between practicality and abstraction in early civilizations. People needed to rest, socialize, negotiate, but they did so with objects reflecting metaphysical systems. The royal game of Ur stands at crossroads of cognition and craft. It teaches us that leisure was intellectual and symbolic. Moreover, Unearthed rules highlight continuity. Human fascination with competition and chance persists. Whether in dice games, card games, or modern sports, we reenact ancient impulse, challenge, risk, outcome. Museums today contextualize the board with narrative. British museum labels explain origin and rule discovery. Digital interactives let visitors move counters across projected board. Scholars publish on game's place in chronology of play. Its fame grew beyond academia. YouTube videos feature Finkel demonstrating game. Enthusiasts around world handcraft replicas. That modern replication honors ancient tradition. But academic study is not finished. Debates continue about symbolic reading of board shape. Some propose two-world journey, earthly plane and divine crossing. Others read layout as procession route, paralleling funerary ritual. These interpretations reflect complexity. Board was not simply decoration. It embodied worldview. Reflecting on players, one picture emerges. Individuals in palace chambers, taking moment between administrative duties to play. Hands move pieces across squares. Advisors watch. Children learn ritual of competition. Priests might observe moves, linking outcome to divination. Even if not universal, such scenes illustrate social dimension of play. In end, board shows how humanity expresses thought through objects. It displays wealth and skill, but also reveals mental structures, belief in fate, attraction to risk, desire for interaction. The royal game of Ur exemplifies interplay between function and meaning. Returning to artifact in museum case, its quiet presence belies narrative unfolding behind it. Visitors peer, read labels, move on. But those who linger sense something profound. This board witnessed generations before written history reached modern minds. It sat under lamplight in courts long gone. It traveled from grave to museum. It reflects ancient world in miniature. What remains then is acknowledgement. Artifacts like this are portals. They connect archaeologists to craftspeople, scholars to scribes, modern players to ancient ones. Through such artifacts, humanity converses across millennia. The royal game of Ur reminds us that civilizations were not monolithic. They were playful, imaginative, strategic, reflective. Kings whispered over it, not simply for winning, but for reading world through structured uncertainty. As museum visitors step away from case, the board remains illuminated, ready for new observers. It endures as testimony to past life, a board that outlived players, a game that never finished, a thought system carved into 20 squares. Some artifacts declare power loudly through size or inscription. This one declares intelligence quietly through play. It is not monumental, but mental, and that makes it one of Mesopotamia's richest legacies. The first tools that shaped us. In a steep rift valley in northern Tanzania, where cliffs frame a dusty floor and wind lifts fine grains of earth from exposed sediment, lies a place once dismissed as barren, until archaeology revealed it as cradle of invention. Olduvai Gorge is now known as one of the most important archaeological landscapes on Earth. Its sediments preserve millions of years of hominin activity, including something so simple yet so revolutionary that it becomes difficult to overstate: the earliest known stone tools deliberately crafted by human ancestors. Displayed today in the Olduvai Gorge Museum, these fragments, flakes, cores, and choppers, do not glitter with precious material, nor boast intricate decoration. They are crude to untrained eye, but their importance lies in intention. More than 2.6 million years ago, someone, not animal, not accident, took a stone and struck it against another to shape a new form. In that moment, cognition left instinct and stepped toward design. Olduvai stone tools represent threshold, where concept became action, where environment was no longer endured but manipulated. The site itself reveals timeline. Layers of volcanic ash and sediments record successive worlds. Lakes, grasslands, river deltas, and hominin remains appear throughout. The most famous discoveries belong to Louis and Mary Leakey, whose excavations in the mid-20th century transformed anthropological history. Mary Leakey identified Oldowan tools, named for this very place, and demonstrated that their creation preceded Homo sapiens by a vast expanse of time. These tools belong to Homo habilis and perhaps other early hominins, beings with smaller brains than modern humans but enough awareness to imagine possibility. The Oldowan toolkit is deceptively small: cores from which flakes were struck, flakes used for slicing, and crude choppers employed to break bone or cut plant material. But engineering principles lurk behind blunt shapes: angled force, fracture control, selection of raw stone types. Many tools at Olduvai were made from basalt gathered kilometers away, implying purposeful transport. Early humans did not simply encounter tools, they carried them, valued them, and reshaped them. At the museum, these tools sit labeled in glass, arranged by layer and date, their edges gleaming under light. Visitors see unworked cobbles beside worked cores, understanding difference: one natural object, one altered by intent. To the viewer, change looks minimal. To evolutionary history, it is seismic. For millions of years before these artifacts, our ancestors relied on teeth and hands alone. With Oldowan tools, cutting efficiency increased dramatically. Bones of animals show cut marks matching edges of flakes. Hominins began accessing marrow and meat more effectively. This altered diet influenced development. Increasing caloric intake supported brain growth. Thus, simple stone flakes contributed indirectly to cognitive expansion. Tools enabled nutrition. Nutrition enabled intellect. Olduvai Gorge today appears quiet, walls of stratified rocks descending into valley, but the museum tells story of bustling prehistory: hominin camps, scavenging grounds, predator encounters, and repeated visits. The site was frequented, not incidental. Archaeologists mapped concentrations of bones, tools, and evidence of reuse. Olduvai was workshop and settlement. Leakey's research was revolutionary because it challenged assumption that ancient artifacts had to be ornate to matter. Here, significance rested in idea. First manufactured edge, first deliberate modification of environment. Before writing and agriculture, before pottery and city walls, came chipped stone. Beyond flakes, Olduvai contains hammerstones with battered surfaces and anvils showing depressions. They show repetitive practice, learning through trial and error. Patterns across layers suggest stone knapping was taught, not stumbled upon randomly. Knowledge transmission began here. Technology came from minds teaching minds. The museum contextualizes these objects with skeletal remains: Homo habilis fossils, Australopithecine bones, and fauna. Together, they illustrate ecological network. Tools expanded access to carcasses, but also attracted competition. Cut marks overlay tooth marks on many bones, hinting that early humans scavenged remains hunted by larger predators. Tools provided advantage, but not dominance. Olduvai humbles us. First inventions were survival efforts, not luxury. Nearby, newer layers reveal Acheulean bifaces, hand axes appearing around 1.7 million years ago. More symmetrical, more refined than Oldowan tools, they show next cognitive leap. But museum rightly begins story with simplest forms, Oldowan flakes, because without that first spark, refinement never follows. The display cases emphasize context, sediment profiles, images of leaky working, excavation trenches cutting through earth like history book. Visitors trace layers upward, seeing progression. Tools changing shape over hundreds of thousands of years. Time becomes physical in cliff faces. Olduvai artifacts challenge assumptions. They show that tool use predates language as we understand it. They imply that planning, even minimal, belonged to early hominins. Selecting good stone, striking correctly, discarding flawed pieces, these actions reflect decision-making. Museum interpretations emphasize that tool-making is cognitive signature, as strong as art or writing later became. Stone tools achieved something profound, externalizing ability. Claws appeared where none existed. Fangs emerged in stone form. Technology substituted biology. Adaptation not through slow evolution, but immediate innovation. Olduvai marks beginning of humanity's mechanical identity. Visitors sometimes overlook what they are seeing, believing objects primitive compared to later artifacts. But curators explain that these are among most intellectually charged objects in any museum worldwide. Without simplicity, complexity cannot evolve. Behind secure glass, some tools still bear sharpness, edges that once sliced skin or tendon. Researchers using replicas cut carcasses to test efficiency. Results show flakes could butcher animals rapidly. Ancient hominins recognized advantage quickly, evidenced by proliferation of tools across gorge. Olduvai also preserves environment transitions, lakes drying, volcanic eruptions layering ash. Through all disruptions, tool making persisted. That continuity highlights behavior patterns. Tool use became habitual, identity-based. The museum works to counter misconception that earliest tools were accidental. Experimental archaeology shows precision emerges in flake patterns, edges chosen, angle of blow controlled. People learned, practiced, refined. Learning curve recognizable today. Mary Leakey mapped discoveries meticulously, cataloging hundreds of artifacts and associations. Her drawings, notes, and typologies remain foundational. Modern surveys build upon her groundwork, using new technologies to analyze microscopic wear, confirming tools were used to cut hide, tendons, tubers. Her conclusions proved prescient. Standing at museum cases, one realizes that Olduvai tools are ancestor voices. We imagine first knapper's hand, perhaps nervous, perhaps curious, perhaps copying. Sparks flying as cobbles strike. Satisfaction at usable edge. Next innovation occurred when flakes themselves became desired, not just core lumps. Conceptual shift. Waste became value. These tools represent moment where species began mastering abstraction. A stone could be altered, but meaning rested not in rock, in what it could do. This mental leap reverberates through history. Invention of fire control, agriculture, writing, machinery. All expansions of ability begun in Olduvai Gorge. We tend to romanticize pyramids and temples, but foundational act that made them possible lies here in a chipped river cobble. Technology enabled surplus, surplus enabled settlement, settlement enabled structure. Place where tools first emerged is cradle of society itself. Today, the Olduvai Gorge Museum places educational emphasis on this pivot. Visitors learn not only how tools were made, but why they matter. Exhibits include replica napping stations, allowing people to try flake removal under guidance, a humbling activity requiring coordination and patience. Curators remind that tool sophistication emerges gradually. Early flakes and choppers may seem rough only against hindsight. To their makers, they were revolutionary. They marked time when mind reached beyond instinct. Even aesthetics exist. Some tools display deliberate symmetry beyond utility. This hints aesthetic sensibility, dimension of human thought beyond survival, possibly earliest hints of preference shaping craft. Museum exterior overlooks gorge floor, outlayered earth telling millions of years. Visitors stand at terrace, seeing horizon and recognizing scale. Tiny tools beneath huge timescape. Inside, controlled lighting isolates objects, encouraging reflection. Archaeologists continue to excavate Olduvai. New discoveries refine timeline. Tools older than initially believed surface. We learn humans did not invent technology quickly once. They iterated endlessly. The value of Olduvai tools is not rarity. Countless exist in deposits. Value lies in meaning. These are first steps toward human civilization. From these stones emerged intention, to solve problems, to improve reach, to invent. Modern humanity relies on tools in everything, from machinery to microchips, but roots sit in grip of pebble in Paleolithic hand. The museum's collection is mirror reflecting origin of engineering. Olduvai stone tools also illustrate vulnerability. Our advancement began fragile. Climate shifts, predators, scarcity, all threatened continuity. But technology anchored resilience. Today, scholars continue debating cognitive thresholds, whether tool-making required teaching, communication, language precursors. Most agree that making tools implies ability to convey sequences learned through imitation. Thus, Olduvai stands at dawn of culture. Visitors who understand this leave museum differently, with respect for unassuming stones. They carry knowledge that innovation's birthplace was here, at Gorge Edge, not in palace or workshop, but in wilderness. The Olduvai Museum houses more than objects. It houses narrative of becoming human. Tools display in cases, but their true weight lies in invisible lineage they set in motion. In summary, these earliest chip stones are not primitive scraps. They are genesis of design. Without them, no later advancements exist. They represent shift from passive creature to active maker. Olduvai stone tools are, therefore, among most important artifacts in world museums, not because they are ornate, but because they are origin. A chipped piece of basalt is blueprint of civilization, and in the quiet halls of the Olduvai Gorge Museum, beneath East African sun, humanity's first inventions rest, humble yet monumental, reminding us where our story began. The golden face of war. In the arid expanse of Central Asia, where desert winds sweep steppe grass and horsemen once thundered between horizons, archaeologists uncovered something curious, a small curved sheet of gold, shaped to cover a warrior's nose. At first glance it is delicate, ornamental, almost modest in size. Yet this golden nose cap, displayed today in the National Museum of Turkmenistan in Ashgabat, tells a story of rank, ritual, warfare, identity, and ancient aesthetics fused into one unlikely object. The artifact belonged to a culture that lived across the lands once traversed by nomadic tribes, ancestors of today's Turkmen. Burial mounds across the region have yielded rich grave goods, weapons, jewelry, horse gear, and ceremonial attire. Among them, this noseguard stands out. It is thin, hammered gold, shaped to follow bridge and tip of nose, pierced for attachment, and sometimes engraved with geometric patterns. Its function appears simple, protection for the face, yet gold is too soft to deflect blows. Thus, its true purpose lies elsewhere. To understand the object, one must enter worldview of steppe warrior elites. Across Central Asia, appearance was political. Armor, masks, and headdresses projected status as much as they protected. The nose cap was part of a larger facial assemblage: helmets, cheek plates, and brow covers. Its gold construction declared rank, perhaps reserved for aristocratic cavalry or ritual combatants. In burial context, the object becomes more than decorative, symbol of identity carried into afterlife. The museum presents the nose cap alongside composite face masks and weapons from the Bronze and early Iron Age. Cases reveal horse trappings plated with gold, dagger hilts inlaid with semi-precious materials, and costume fragments preserved by desert dryness. The noseguard sits quietly among them, but curators draw attention to how rarely such pieces survive. Metal often melted, reused, or corroded. This artifact persists because it was placed in tomb, sealed away, and forgotten until excavation. Archaeologists excavating in Turkmenistan, especially at ancient settlements like Gunur Tepe, Altın Dipe, and sites in Merv Oasis, uncovered graves rich in golden adornment. These communities were linked to Oxus civilization, also called Bactria Margiana Archaeological Complex, flourishing between 2200–1700 BCE. Their elite displayed wealth through body decoration and horse equipment. Gold nose caps belong to that tradition, emphasizing face as locus of sacred and social expression. Consider anthropological context. Many ancient cultures emphasized nose in symbolism, as seat of breath, life force, or warrior fierceness. In battle, breaking nose was humiliation. A golden guard thus asserted inviolability, not literal protection, but metaphoric shield. The cap acted as visual reinforcement of status. My face, my spirit, my lineage cannot be harmed. Metalworkers hammered sheet gold into curved ridge, cut small slits for attachment to helmet or head strap. Some examples display fine punchwork suggesting motif, dots, lines, or stylized animal imagery. The craftsmanship, though small scale, required precision and knowledge of metallurgy. Gold must be shaped without cracking, difficult for thin sheet. That ability indicates skilled artisans serving elite demand. Displayed under controlled lighting, the cap's sheen evokes ritual quality. Visitors sometimes mistake it for miniature armor. Guides explain it served ceremonial, not defensive function. Museum placards show how it would sit on face, covering nose bridge, securing under helmet brow. In reconstructions, full warrior regalia transforms individual into almost mythic figure, shimmering in gold. Excavation reports emphasize context. Nose caps often accompanied weapons, spears, axes, quivers, implying warrior identity. Some appear in graves of young men, others in elders, suggesting role inherited or symbol retained beyond active service. That placement reaffirms burial ideology, warrior essence honored in death. The National Museum of Turkmenistan presents artifacts with narrative, stepping viewers through early cultures, nomadic expansions, Saka and Masajatai traditions, and later Silk Road power centers. The golden nose cap sits with an exhibition dedicated to early social stratification. Museum text notes that elites in regions signified power through gold use long before Persian empires. This cap is small but loud, one of earliest examples of facial ornamentation tied to authority. Nearby in case, horse cheek pieces ornamented in gold reveal parallel symbolism. Rider and mount, both adorned. In Central Asian steppe culture, warrior and horse were inseparable. Nose cap and horse ornaments mirror each other, projecting composite identity. People walking through galleries see nose cap beside bridle fittings and realize shared design language. This object also reveals gendered interpretation. Though likely male, some grave contexts blur roles. Women in high-status burials possessed weapons and adornments. Archaeologists caution against rigid assumptions. Golden nose cap may signify ritual office, rather than battlefield role exclusively. Museum encourages this nuance. Unlike swords or helmets, nose cap challenges expectations. Why protect nose? Why gold? Answer lies in visibility. Nose sits center of face. Ornament draws gaze. In performance, ceremony, alliance negotiation, or cavalry parades, gleaming gold on nose created focal point, authority anchored in face. Ancient texts from neighboring regions describe kings veiling noses or decorating brow, perhaps related tradition. Thus, cap is fragment of wider iconography of power. Manufacturing technique is key theme in museum. Gold sheet hammered over form, edges trimmed, surface polished. Some were heated to soften metal, indicating metallurgical sophistication. Inlaid examples required engraving channels. Attachment threads likely made of leather or textile, now decayed. Standing before case, visitors note how small object is, yet display narrative elevates it. Voice from Bronze Age hierarchy. Few physical objects communicate identity so directly. The golden nose cap is mask fragment, incomplete on its own, but complete signifier historically. Archaeologically, these caps help map cultural interactions. Similar facial ornaments appear in Iran, Afghanistan, and Caucasus, but with stylistic variations. Old trade routes connected these zones. Museum research papers note shared motifs, suggesting elite warrior class across regions use face ornaments as status markers. Turkmen nose cap fits into transcontinental web of symbolism. Modern viewers may associate nose caps with horse mask or festival adornment. Museum uses illustrations to clarify placement on human face, under helmet brim. Once understood, artifact's power becomes evident. Gold drew sunlight, catching attention. There is theatricality to warfare and ceremony. This cap participated in visual spectacle. The museum positions its narrative in national identity. Turkmenistan traces heritage to ancient steppe civilizations. Golden nose cap becomes emblem of continuity, strength, mobility, artistry. Yet curators are careful not to oversimplify. Contextual panels discuss archaeological interpretation process, how meaning evolved as more examples discovered. Find sites reveal social layers. Burial mounds with gold caps are rarer than ordinary graves, marking elite. Thus cap helps measure inequality, authority centralization, proto-state formation. Researchers examine cap placement in burials. On skull, near head, atop chest, informing rituals. Visitors drawn to gold's beauty may overlook deeper story. This is earliest face armor, one of first examples of symbolic bodily ornamentation. It shows humanity's fascination with transforming face through metal, foreshadowing helmets, crowns, masks. The museum atmosphere enhances artifacts' gravity. Climate control ensures gold remains untarnished. Dark background highlights shine. Descriptive plaques speak of Oxus culture's complexity. Nearby screens show digital reconstructions of warriors. Nose cap gleaming as rider gallops across steppe. It allows viewers to visualize original context. Artifact quietly bridges ancient and modern Turkmen identity, representing craftsmanship and warrior ethos. Museums play a role in narrative building. Object becomes cultural ambassador. To archaeologists, nose cap is part of greater dataset, fragment of martial costume. To historians, it tells social structure. To anthropologists, it hints ritual significance. To viewers, it sparks imagination. What did warrior look like? What ceremony involved such ornament? Why nose? The cap's survival is delicate miracle. Small sheet could easily be damaged, melted down, or lost. Its intact state suggests respectful burial handling, grave goods carefully placed, a moment of reverence preserved object across millennia. Ultimately, standing in front of display, one sees more than metal. One sees identity materialized. Golden nose cap is symbol of transformation. Ordinary face made extraordinary. Warrior became icon. Ancient peoples constructed meaning through objects. Here, warrior face became stage for gold statement. The nose, bridge of breath and perception, marked by metal, implies social elevation. Thus, at National Museum of Turkmenistan, the golden nose cap is not accessory. It is message. In its curve lies authority, status, ritual, continuity. It teaches modern observers something profound. Civilization is not built only in weapons and architecture, but in symbols people wear to show who they are. This tiny gold sheet reveals ancient world of hierarchy, belief, pride, and performance. The warrior who wore it is long gone. His horse dust, his banners fallen, but his identity survives in gold. And in museum silence of Ashgabat, the cap gleams under lights. Reminder that even smallest artifact can carry history of a people. The blade that refused to age. In the depths of a sealed tomb from ancient China, where lacquered coffins rested beside ritual objects and musical instruments, archaeologists uncovered a weapon that should have long since surrendered to time. Yet when lifted from waterlogged burial soil, it gleamed, bright, untarnished, razor-edged. That sword, known today as the Rongcheng sword, rests in the Hubei Provincial Museum in Wuhan, a testament not only to ancient craftsmanship but to scientific mastery that continues to puzzle metallurgists and historians alike. It was discovered in 1965, in a region once controlled by the ancient state of Chu, during excavations of tombs dated to the Warring States period, 475-2021 BCE. These excavations yielded lacquerware, bronze vessels, chariots, zithers, and armor. But among them, one artifact captured international attention. The sword was bronze, but unlike typical corroded weapons, its surface shone with near-mirror clarity. When researchers tested its sharpness, it sliced paper effortlessly. Even more astonishing, the blade bore no oxidation. After more than 2 millennia underground, the sword measures just under 60 centimeters, with ornate grip and diamond-patterned decoration. Its blade bears inscription referring to Rongcheng, a designation tied to noble rank or territorial command. Its artistry reflects Chu culture, elaborate aesthetics combined with formidable weapon technology. Despite being Bronze Age material, it rivals modern steel in resilience. China's Warring States era was Age of Innovation. States competed in warfare, bureaucracy, diplomacy, and material science. Metallurgy advanced rapidly under pressure of conflict. Chu artisans forged swords through alloy manipulation, controlling proportions of copper, tin, and traces of other elements. This chemical precision granted hardness and elasticity. The Rongcheng sword epitomizes this craft, but its greatest mystery remains corrosion resistance. Centuries buried in humid soil typically degrade bronze severely, leaving green patina or damage. Instead, Rongcheng's sword emerged with the luster intact. Later analysis indicated high tin surface concentration and deliberate anti-corrosion treatment, perhaps through passivation layer applied during manufacture. Ancient metallurgists achieved results modern scientists struggle to replicate without advanced processes. Visitors encountering sword at Hubei Provincial Museum read about this marvel, but seeing it conveys shock. Artifact appears timeless. Its clarity undermines expectations of age. Guides emphasize that sword's brilliance is authentic, not restored or artificially cleaned. Archaeologists cleaned soil residue, but blade required no heavy treatment. The sword sits in controlled humidity case, illuminated to reveal craftsmanship. Its grip decoration includes inlaid patterns and fine lines, evidence of royal or noble ownership. Chu culture valued symbolic elaboration. Weapons were identity markers, not simply tools. A sword of this quality signaled status, authority, and ritual role. Context reveals more. Tomb also held bronze bells and lacquered items. Music and weaponry intertwined in elite culture. Warrior was patron of art, and sword emblem of virtue. Many Chinese texts idealize sword as extension of moral character, instrument through which order manifested. Rongcheng's sword reflects this ideology, form beautiful, function lethal. Scholars debate owner's rank. Inscription referencing Rongcheng suggests elite status, likely aristocratic officer or commander. Burial goods imply wealth. Chu state was expansive, centered in Yangtze River region, distinguished by creativity, distinct artistic style, and refined bronze casting. Sword embodies these traits, combining practical excellence with aesthetic language. Museum panels interpret sword as highlight of Chu metallurgy. They present micro-photographs of blade structure, grain orientation, composition gradient. These reveal advanced casting followed by careful hammering and an annealing. Edges hardened selectively, techniques similar to differential tempering known in later steelwork. Ancient artisans achieved through iteration and empirical knowledge, not theoretical science. The sword's preservation raises questions. Tomb conditions, burial environment, soil chemistry. Analysis suggests blade surface bound with protective silica layer, formed either deliberately or as reaction of unique alloy. This layer inhibits corrosion. Its formation demonstrates ancient understanding of metallurgy surpassing basic smelting. In broader view, sword tells story of China's technological arc. Before iron dominance, bronze ruled weaponry. Chu swordmasters competed with other states, Yue Wu, famous for blade making. Legend speaks of famous swordsmiths, Ganjiang and Moye forging perfect blades. Rongcheng's sword appears product of this competitive excellence. Real artifact aligned with mythic tradition. Visitors walk through museum and see armor, chariots, musical stones, lacquer screens, but sword draws crowd. Its presence is visceral. People reflect on time and technology, how ancient culture achieved engineering unmatched until modern period. Curators enhance experience with video demonstrations showing replica tests cutting bamboo or fabric, illustrating blade's functional edge. To archaeology, sword anchors chronology of technological sophistication. To historians, it reflects political turbulence of Warring States era. To scientists, it is case study in ancient corrosion resistance. Museum labels distill these layers, but narrative deepens when one considers weapons' symbolic life. Bronze swords like this were worn in ceremonies, displayed at court, gifted as diplomatic tokens. They held value beyond battlefield. The Rongcheng sword likely traveled through lineage before burial, heirloom-bearing legacy. Its placement in tombs was intentional, affirming warrior identity after death. The museum contextualizes this within concept of afterlife. Elites prepared tombs with goods necessary for next existence. Sword functions as protective talisman and signifier of soul's identity. This echoes cultural continuity in later Chinese burials. Symbolic objects accompany deceased. Inside glass case, tiny inscription characters reveal language evolution. Script style aligns with Chu's version of early Chinese writing, distinct from later standardizations. Scholars decode name or title with caution. Variations exist, yet inscription carries personal connection. Sword belonged to named individual, not anonymous instrument. This personalization increases artifacts' weight. Unlike generic weapons, sword carries story of owner. Museum narrative suggests he was leader or noble. Standing before display, visitors sense presence of that figure. A warrior who commissioned or inherited blade, believed in its power, wielded it in life. Museum intentionally positions artifact as centerpiece near other Chu objects, including the famous bronze bells of Marquis Yi of Zheng. Connection between music and weapon underscores cultural philosophy, harmony in life, discipline in war. Curators design room to mirror worldview. Archaeological conservators monitor sword carefully. Light exposure, humidity, handling. Preservation ensures blade remains as found. This stewardship continues ancient care. Sword once valued in life, now honored in museum. Rongcheng sword challenges assumptions about ancient technology. Its preservation contradicts expectation of corrosion. Its sharpness contradicts notion of primitive metallurgy. Instead, weapon suggests long experimentation. Artisans refining alloys through generations. Museum showcase includes comparison blades, corroded bronze, iron that rusted, and replicas. Contrasts emphasize excellence. Visitors learned that scientific inquiry into swords preservation revealed alloying method, copper tin bronze with traces of sulfur and lead, plus high surface tin concentration. These variables combined produce stable metal. But deeper meaning lies not in chemistry. It lies in vision. Chu swordmakers viewed weapon as statement of sophistication, ideology, cosmology. Encasing nose of warrior in gold, as seen in Turkmen examples, parallels Chinese fascination with facial projection. Similarly, sword projected identity and virtue. Holding gaze at sword, one contemplates lost world. Court rituals, military training, diplomatic negotiations. Blade would have been polished, admired, symbol of loyalty and legitimacy. When kingdom collapsed or leader died, sword placed in tomb preserved memory. Today, in museum silence, weapon persists, no longer slicing enemies, but cutting through time. Visitors examine it with curiosity. Why did it survive so intact? How did ancient artisans achieve this? What values gave rise to object this magnificent? The Rongcheng sword reminds that heritage lies not only in monumental architecture, but in mastery of materials. Bronze became medium of meaning. Sword transformed craft into legacy. Ultimately, artifact teaches something fundamental. Civilizations encode values into objects. Here, moral philosophy, rank structure, martial discipline, technological ingenuity merge into a blade that did not age. It is radiant proof that ancient people could rival or surpass our expectations. And under soft light of Hubei Provincial Museum, the Rongcheng sword remains what it was long ago. Symbol of status, instrument of skill, masterpiece of alloy and intellect. The blade that refused to decay. The bronzes that remembered their gods. In the rugged mountains of western Iran, among steep ridges and narrow valleys where herding paths trace ancient movement, archaeologists stumbled upon a legacy that rewrote bronze and Iron Age craftsmanship. The Luristan bronzes, found mostly in burial deposits and sanctuary layers across the Zagros highlands. These objects, now showcased prominently in the National Museum of Iran in Tehran, display an astonishing combination of artistic imagination, spiritual language, and metallurgical sophistication. Luristan bronzes is collective term for thousands of intricately cast metal artifacts dating roughly between 1200 and 600 BCE. They include horse trappings, chariot fittings, ceremonial standards, pinheads, belt buckles, weapons, and furniture adornments. Across them, repeated motifs appear: winged deities, horned animals, guardian figures, confronted beasts, tree-like shapes, human-animal hybrids. These bronzes are recognizable at glance. Their style is unmistakable, and each piece feels less like utilitarian hardware and more like miniature shrine. The story begins with discovery. In early 20th century, locals unearthing graves and selling artifacts brought bronzes to antiquities markets. They were mysterious. Unlike neighboring civilizations' designs, scholars investigated provenance, eventually tracing source to Luristan region. Systematic excavations followed. Burial sites produced assemblages where bronzes accompanied weapons, jewelry, and personal ornaments. Grave goods implied both ritual significance and elite identity. Metalwork skill evident in these bronzes is extraordinary. Casting achieved details so fine, loops, curls, raised lines, animal anatomies, that replicating them today still challenges foundry artists. Techniques included lost wax casting, alloy control, and furnace mastery. Makers not only knew how to cast, but how to sculpt metal into narrative. Among Luristan bronzes, standards draw most attention. Tall shafts with openwork scenes at top, possibly used as insignia, ritual flags, or ceremonial emblems. Some show central deity flanked by animals. Others depict confronted creatures locked in eternal symmetry. These forms reflect belief system, presence of intermediary spirits protecting households, clans, or warriors. Visitors to the National Museum of Iran encounter display cases filled with these standards, silhouetted against dark backgrounds, their mythic figures caught in green patina. That patina results from millennia of burial mineral reaction, yet underlying artistry remains intact. Curators emphasize diversity. No two standards identical. Artisans treated each as narrative canvas. Other bronzes include harness fittings, elaborate cheek pieces for horses with stylized animal heads, suggesting high esteem for cavalry. Horse imagery appears frequently, likely reflecting pastoralism and mounted warfare essential to region. To wear such trappings signaled prestige. Riders became embodiments of mythic archetypes. Museums placed cheek pieces near modeled horse skulls so visitors visualize original placement. Weaponry emerges too: daggers, axes, spearheads. But their hilts or sockets often decorated with imaginative designs. Weapons became ritual objects as much as battle tools. Some appear unused, deposited for symbolic reasons. Tomb placement suggests warriors carried their identity, not mere arms, into afterlife. Pinheads, large bronze pins with ornate tops, fascinate museum viewers. These top cloaks or hair and depict scenes: lovers embracing, animals merging forms, anthropomorphic protector beings. Their meaning transcended decoration. Pins were portable icons. Discussing Luristan bronzes means acknowledging trade and exchange. These mountains lay between Mesopotamia and Iranian plateau. Ideas flowed along this corridor, yet bronzes show style distinct from both, hybrid yet unique. That individuality made them valuable to collectors, but also challenging for archaeologists determining authenticity. Museum involvement became crucial because market circulation risked fakes. Through excavation, museum established firm typology. Authentic bronzes classified by form, motif, alloy, and burial context. Their function continues debated. Standards likely guarded households or graves, invoked protective forces, or represented family symbols. They might have been displayed at feasts or ceremonies. Ritual deposit explains burial find locations, but motifs remain partly enigmatic. Composite creatures and symbolic patterns defy simple decoding. At National Museum of Iran, narrative panels explain theories but emphasize interpretive humility. Luristan worldview remains partly veiled. Visitors admire beauty and wonder purpose, exactly as scholars do. The bronze's metallurgy invites respect. Analyses show controlled mixing of copper, tin, and trace elements. Lost wax casting allowed hollow elements and openwork complexity. Quality control implies workshop tradition. Master artisans teaching apprentices, style evolving generationally. Museums display tools and molds found at some sites, fragments of casting process that reveal technical insight. Burial contexts often include multiple bronzes, standards beside weapons, pins, ornaments. Grouping suggests coherent ritual language. Social hierarchy visible. Richer graves contained elaborate bronzes, others simple items. This inequality highlights rising chiefdoms in Zagros region. Landscape influenced style too. Mountain isolation fostered internal development, yet motifs connect to widespread Eurasian themes. Guardian beasts, duality, tree of life forms. Museum texts explore possible Indo-Iranian myth influences, stories echoing Vedic and Avestan traditions, but no written record from Luristan exists to confirm. Artifacts speak wordlessly. Visitors gaze into cases recognizing something primal. Humans trying to embody spiritual world in metal. Creativity meets faith. Tools become icons. The bronze's patina, deep green, mottled brown, enhances aura of antiquity. Under controlled lighting, curves and voids cast shadows like living forms. Some pieces depict gripping interactions. Lion seizing goat, human holding serpent, beings with horns or wings. These manifest worldview of power exchange, balance, protection. Others show simplified geometric abstractions. The museum arranges them thematically, guiding viewer through evolution of style. Conservation is constant challenge. Bronzes corrode unpredictably. Museum laboratories stabilize surfaces, remove active bronze disease, and maintain humidity. This ensures millennia-old objects continue surviving centuries more. Despite academic focus, emotional resonance remains. For modern Turkmen, Persian, Kurdish peoples, these bronzes connect distant ancestors. While exact ethnic lines uncertain, artistic DNA inspires national heritage. Museum contextualizes Luristan people as early Iranian plateau inhabitants whose craftsmanship shaped regional identity. Artifacts' journey from grave to museum exemplifies archaeology's ethical transformation. Today, context paramount. Luristan bronzes once flooded international markets separated from meaning. Museum now reclaims narrative. Objects reconnected to land. Story restored. But aesthetic power transcends context. Look closely at Standard's central figure. Arms extended, wings unfurled. Notice horse-cheek piece terminating in snarling feline form. See pinhead scene of lovers as intertwined silhouettes. These capture human attempt to symbolize relationships, fears, and hopes. In many exhibitions, bronzes appear as jewelry. Here, they appear as cosmology. Aesthetic and spiritual converge. Museum labels note how some bronzes might have invoked divine favor before battle, guarded homes, or marked clan belonging. They were alive in social imagination. Metallurgical tests suggest repeated smelting cycles. Bronzes recast, styles evolving. Old pieces sometimes refashioned, meaning shifting. This dynamism parallels modern reinterpretation. Artifacts constantly re-understood. Presence of bronzes in graves also implies funerary ritual. Objects served deceased's journey. Perhaps Standards defended soul, or spoke identity before gods. While interpretation speculative, universality exists. Ancient peoples used art in death as in life. Visitors often linger near display long minutes, captivated by visual complexity. Some pieces resemble modern sculpture, abstract forms ahead of time. That familiarity bridges millennia. Museum's goal is not simply admiration, but education. Panels explain forging process, burial contexts, and broader cultural movements. Videos show experimental archaeologists replicating bronzes using ancient methods, furnace bellows, clay molds, wax models. This practical demonstration enriches understanding of original artisans' mastery. Ultimately, the Luristan bronzes remind that civilizations articulate belief systems through craft. They encode narratives absent from written record. They reveal political and ritual hierarchy. They show technical sophistication tied to imagination. As visitors exit gallery, they grasp significance. These bronzes are not ornaments alone. They are theological statements, embodiments of ideology. They endure as mute messengers of vanished mountain cultures, bronze that carried prayers, authority, myth. And within the National Museum of Iran, under curatorial light, they whisper legacy, the bronzes that remembered their gods. The skull that raised too many questions. In northern Mexico, Tucked away not in a glass display, but in controlled research storage, lies a human skull fragment, unlike any other recovered in modern archaeological inquiry. It is small, asymmetric, unusually shaped, and famously known as the Star Child skull. Archaeologists, geneticists, and physical anthropologists have examined it for decades. Not because it fits mythologies whispered online, but because it raises legitimate scientific questions about cranial development, cultural practice, disease, and burial customs among pre-Columbian peoples. Its story begins in the 1930s, when a young girl exploring abandoned mining tunnels near Copper Canyon, Chihuahua, reportedly discovered two skeletons, one adult and one child, buried shallow in sediment. The remains were later kept privately until the 1990s, when laboratory analysis finally began. The smaller skull immediately drew attention. Its cranial vault appeared enlarged, cheekbones recessed, eye sockets unusually shallow, and bone unusually thick and resilient. The adult skull exhibited typical morphology. The smaller did not. It entered academic circulation under informal name Star Child, not implying extraterrestrial origin, but signifying its morphological oddity relative to expected human variation. Researchers knew what not to assume, that anomalies demand explanation, not imagination, and so the Museo de la Cultura de Chihuahua became responsible custodian, facilitating research access while shielding object from sensationalism. On first inspection, the skull is small, belonging almost certainly to a child around 5 years old, but its cranial volume suggests enlarged brain cavity. Bone mineral density is markedly higher than most subadult skulls, making sections surprisingly strong. Sutures appear fused in unusual ways. The orbital sockets are shallow, suggesting developmental disorder affecting eye region. None of these are singularly unique. Craniofacial deformities in ancient populations are documented, but their combination in one skull made scientific teams reevaluate typical classifications. Anthropologists noted similarities to hydrocephaly, a condition where cerebrospinal fluid accumulation expands cranial vault. Yet other features contradicted that diagnosis: skull thickness rather than thinning, unusual suture closure patterns, malformed sinus structures. Microcephaly was also dismissed. The skull was too large. Deformational practices such as cranial binding were considered widespread in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, but symmetry and bone morphology did not match typical intentional modification patterns. The child's skull appeared to represent complex pathology or congenital syndrome not fully understood. DNA testing performed in early 2000s faced technological limitations. Degraded ancient DNA often misleads interpretation. Later analyses confirmed presence of human mitochondrial DNA, identifying maternal lineage as Native American. Nuclear DNA was more difficult to extract, but all successful sequencing indicated the specimen was biologically human. The result settled scientific debate. The skull is not non-human, but it remains biologically unusual. The Museo de la Cultura de Chihuahua emphasizes this distinction. It teaches that ancient populations experienced developmental disorders, malnutrition effects, and congenital conditions just as modern societies do. Archaeological remains help track health patterns, hereditary traits, and cultural responses to disability. The Star Child skull thus serves as anatomical case study, not anomaly, but evidence of diversity in ancient life experiences. Researchers also examined burial context. The child was interred alongside an adult female, presumed caretaker or mother, in shallow grave within mining area. That proximity suggests family relationship or ritual pairing. Child likely lived long enough for condition to progress. Adult likely ensured burial rather than abandonment. Museum educators frame narrative through compassion. The skull represents a life lived and tended, not only its medical features. One striking feature is smoothness of bone surface, in regions where normal skulls exhibit pronounced ridge textures. Microscopy shows collagen density higher than usual, that raise questions about developmental biology in prehistoric populations. Perhaps nutritional or environmental factors influence growth. Combined traits led some scientists to propose that skull represents rare multipathology case, mixture of congenital cranial dysgenesis, hydrocephalic symptoms, and bone remodeling. The museum holds the skull in research collection rather than main exhibition for two reasons: scientific privacy and public misinterpretation risk. It is available for visiting scholars. Its presence is acknowledged but not sensationalized. Museum philosophy prioritizes context, not spectacle. Yet the skull gained public notoriety through fringe interpretations, claims of hybrid origin, extraterrestrial ancestry, or engineered anomalies. These claims, made without peer review, blurred artifact credibility. Museums and academics responded by publishing evidence. DNA confirms human origin. Pathology explains morphology. No biological features lie outside possible human variation. As museum text clarifies, unusual doesn't mean unearthly. Still, the skull's physical presence captivates. Researchers describe holding it and feeling weight disproportionate to size. Dense, heavy bone. Its eye sockets facing slightly forward and upward give impression of atypical gaze. Cranial back bulges outward, like expanded neurocranium. Skull shape evokes image outside familiar proportions, which explains why it became lightning rod of speculation. But anthropology's job is not to entertain myth, but decode meaning. The museum uses this object to educate students in toward osteology, teaching comparative pathology. It is reference specimen in university classrooms. Radiographs, CT imaging, and 3D scans document internal anomalies. By analyzing skull across disciplines, researchers deepen knowledge of ancient health challenges. Genetic sequencing continues cautiously. Ancient DNA contamination, degradation, and modern intrusion complicate conclusions. But overall consensus remains. Specimen belonged to a child with severe congenital cranial disorder. That disorder reshaped skull anatomy in ways rarely seen today. Museum researchers work to classify condition through comparative studies, merging archaeology, forensic anthropology, and medical imaging. The skull's importance lies not in exotic claims but in human narrative. It represents vulnerability in ancient community, a child born with significant challenges, cared for long enough to require burial ritual. This human dimension, survival beyond infancy despite physical disability, implies social support and parental care in pre-Columbian group. Museum educators emphasize this compassion. Ancient people did not discard child. They buried them with honor beside adult. Its location within Chihuahua Cultural Museum fits broader heritage. Native peoples of northern Mexico practiced cranial modification, ranked social roles, and maintained complex rituals. Pathological skulls help researchers distinguish between intentional modification and medical abnormality, refining interpretation of ancient identity. To view the skull today, under research storage lighting, not gallery spotlight, is to confront humanness rather than mystery. Its asymmetry reflects biological struggle, not mythic narrative. Museum curators invite scholars to study it, learn from it, contextualize it, correct misconceptions, and look at child behind bone rather than legend projected on it. The scientific lesson echoed by the Museo de la Cultura de Chihuahua is simple. Mystery does not require the unearthly. Human biology provides plenty. The Starchild skull is a reminder of what anthropology always discovers. Variation within humanity is immense. Nature experiments constantly. Rare syndromes existed long before diagnosis, long before writing, long before recorded medicine. Archaeological remains preserve those stories, and careful study reveals them. In the end, skull's impact is profound not because it is alien, but because it is human. It symbolizes complexity of early life, perseverance of families, scientific humility, and danger of speculation overtaking evidence. It asks viewers to look closely before leaping to myth. It rewards those who study data, not rumor, and so it remains in museum storage, quiet, protected, researched, not displayed for spectacle, but preserved for knowledge. The Starchild skull is not voice of stars, but voice of child, lasting testament to diversity of ancient humanity, and to responsibility of museums to guard truth beneath fascination. Thank you for exploring humanity's forgotten puzzles with us. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient clues and unanswered mysteries, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Until next time, may the past keep whispering, and may we keep listening.